How are you?
Doing well, yeah, man. How are you?
Good, good. What do you think about this morning's employment numbers?
I mean, once again, like what I said yesterday, I don't know what to trust. I mean, I don't know, I think you follow the Colbasi letter, right? And if
No, I
you,
don't.
oh, okay, I'll try to post it up here. I mean, if you break down the total, I mean, a lot of numbers just don't add up. I'll try to post it up here. So, I mean, unemployment's still kind of ticking up. And if you actually look at where the true employment came from, which is the government numbers that have been added up, while private payrolls have been actually down, it's not really encouraging to me. I mean, it's not a positive sign in any manner.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is the average hourly earnings number went up by 0.4%, which obviously is above where the Fed wants it. I think the Fed wants it at between 0.2 to 0.3%. And then one more thing to note here is the unemployment number that ticked up to from 4.1 to 4.2%. If you take it out a couple more digits, it's at 4.2467%. So it's just kind of on the verge of becoming 4.3. So combined with unemployment rate rising, the private payrolls declining, and average hourly earnings rising more than expected, I think the Fed seems to be in a bit of a pickle here. What do you think?
Completely. I think they, they stepped, the whole inflation thing was such a debacle right from the beginning, right? They let it get off out of hand. They made it political. They called it transitory. And then when it got really out of hand, they tried to squash it and had to go to extreme measures. And now they're kind of, in this bind. And that's why I say this, that, as much as the Trump administration is going to start to get things going, but, there's going to be a lot of pain that they're going to have to go through to kind of get things back into norm. Okay. And we were kind of talking about it yesterday a little bit on the GDP front. Okay. The government sector has never contributed to the GDP more in the last 30 years than it did in 2023. Okay. And I know you have a differing opinion on that in terms of, will DOGE be able to do it or not? But they're definitely going to try, and I think they will be. I mean, you're seeing a lot of bipartisan people. I mean, Ro Khanna from California actually kind of chimed in that, hey, I'm here to help too. So this is just something you can't deny. I mean, you can be on either which party, but with some of these examples that they're laying out in terms of spending, I mean, how many government workers are working from home? How many government workers don't show up? Buildings are vacant. I mean, which party or which person is going to be opposed to cutting down, expenses on that? So I think they will get to it. And that's definitely also going to take a toll on GDP initially, at least.
Yeah. Lucia, what do you think? Are you following GDP numbers, unemployment numbers?
A little bit. I have to say that I really don't understand very well the importance of the job numbers because I'm not American. But for what I've seen, between 4 and 5 should be fine, right? Even though it's increasing.
Between 4 and 5%? Yeah, I think 5% is actually could be a problem. I guess it depends on how fast it gets there. But like ACDC pointed out, government spending has been a really major part of economic growth, surprising to the upside in the last year or two, despite the massive brakes being pushed by the Fed in a really major way. So it really is. I'm curious about how DOGE will able to, the Department of Government Efficiency will be able to cut spending. There are bets going on Kalshi, the betting website, about how much they're going to be able to cut spending. And even so, Elon has said maybe they will be able to cut $2 trillion from government spending. But even $250 million bet is less than 50-50 likely. So I don't think the markets are expecting any sort of cuts from these efforts. But Elon seems to be very focused on it. So ACDC, what do you think?
100%.
They're going to be
I
able to
mean,
do?
if you look at it, I mean, Elon hasn't taken a step back, okay? And this is not something that, like, once again, people may say, oh, well, because I hear this a lot from the Democrats, you know, that, oh, Elon's in it for himself, okay? Well, he's got the guy in. He could have been back in Texas. He could have been back wherever and focusing on his old stuff. But he's wholeheartedly in it to fix this problem for the long term, or at least fix it once. Okay. I mean, yesterday you saw, I mean, he's in a 6-hour congressional hearing and he's got a little X on his back with him the whole time. Okay. So he's in it. And, you know, the 2 trillion is a very, very hefty goal. I don't think they get to it because I think they've also proposed a deadline for DOGE too. I think it's 1.5 years out or something. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think they can definitely make a dent. And even if it's half, that's a considerable part of total spending.
Yeah. Yeah, he's in it. You said 6.5 hours he was on there?
The congressional hearings went on for 6 hours.
Did you watch it?
I don't watch all of it. I actually haven't even seen many clips of it. So I'm sure he wasn't in it the whole time, but he was in there. He was sitting, you know, through the hearings and with little X by his side.
Yeah, interesting. Let's see, there's a Reuters article on it. Let's read this real quick. Billionaire Elon Musk and former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy met on Thursday with Republican lawmakers whose support they will need to win the sweeping spending cuts that President-elect Donald Trump has asked them to find. Trump has named 2 entrepreneurs to a task force that aims for a sweeping overhaul of the US government, which spent $6.8 trillion in the most recent fiscal year. Musk has set a target of $2 trillion in savings, though he has not said whether that would come in a single year or over a longer period. The 2 chairs of the Department of Government Efficiency have called for firing of thousands of federal workers, slashing regulations, and eliminating programs whose authorization has expired, such as veterans' healthcare. That could be easier said than done. Any changes to veterans' benefits or other popular programs that serve millions of Americans would likely encounter fierce blowback, and efforts to thin the workforce could disrupt everything from law enforcement to air traffic control. We want to help him in any way that we can. He's got obviously a big mission, but we all think the effort they're undertaking is long overdue, Senator John Thune, who will lead the Republican majority next year, told reporters after meeting with Musk. Musk, who earlier rushed through the Capitol's crowded corridors, clutching the hand of a small child. Oh my gosh, that is a horrible way to put that. His own child. Offered few details on how he will try to accomplish his sweeping cost-cutting goals. Quote, I think we just need to make sure we spend the public's money well, end quote, said Musk. The billionaire CEO of electric car maker Tesla and SpaceX addressed only one specific policy when asked about the EV tax credits, responding, quote, I think we should get rid of all credits, end quote. Musk companies benefit from federal contracts and tax breaks and also are subject to regulatory oversight, raising concerns that his involvement with the efficiency panel creates a conflict of interest. Ramaswamy met separately with a group of Senate Republicans, including Tom Tillis, who said afterward they discussed actions the Trump administration could take on its own, rather than those that would require legislation. Quote, is this an administrative action that doesn't require congressional approval? Rock on. Do it now or do it after January 20, end quote, he told reporters. As co-chairs of the Efficiency Task Force, Musk and Ramaswamy, a former biotech executive, would likely have to work with Congress to secure significant reductions. Republicans will control both chambers of Congress and the White House next year. But they may struggle to win significant reductions. While lawmakers sign off on roughly $1.7 trillion in defense and domestic programs each year, most federal spending consists of health, pension, and other benefit programs that lie outside of the annual budget process. Lawmakers also have no control over interest payments, which are projected to top $1 trillion in this fiscal year. Republican lawmakers have said they are eager to cooperate. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, a hard right fireband, will chair a House of Representatives panel to work with Musk and Ramaswamy, and Senate lawmakers have also expressed openness to the idea. Republicans secured limited spending cuts in a 2023 showdown with Democratic President Joe Biden, but have been unable to agree on further reductions since then. Trump has brokered with former Republican orthodoxy by saying he will not cut benefits for the Social Security pension plan or the Medicare health plan for seniors, which together account for more than 1/3 of federal spending. Interesting. Trump showed little interest in spending cuts during his first 2017 to 2021 term in office, when federal expenditures grew from $4 trillion to $6.2 trillion. Congress did not act on his proposal to eliminate more than a dozen small government agencies that failed to repeal Democratic President Barack Obama's signature Affordable Care Act, a central goal of the party. Interesting. ACDC, any thoughts on the article that I just read from Reuters?
No, it's spot on. And if you recall, they clearly have Elon, and this is Elon and Vivek. Okay, they both have clearly said that DOGE is going to be very transparent, and every action of theirs will be posted on X as to what they're doing. Okay, so a lot of these lawmakers, they're going to get pushback if they, from their constituents, if they go against it. I mean, like I said, nobody can argue against this, but I mean, this government, and especially some of the things that they've been pointing out, I mean, this is absurd levels of spending.
Yeah, it's also interesting that they're having this discussion of, can we do this now? Do we need the legislation for that one? Like, you would think that maybe they would have a better idea, or maybe just kind of going down to the details on a few that they didn't know.
Right, and that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but these are two really, really smart guys, and they've already highlighted a few ways where they may not need, or they can have workarounds for certain things and still do it. So they're, I mean, the microscope is on both of these guys. So, and I don't think that, like I said, they're both really smart people, and they're not going to fail.
Luce?
Beside the government spending and the debt, I'm very surprised that Elon doesn't want to cut pensions, being that baby boomers going in retirement is a big part of the financial cliff that threatens the U.S. economy. In my opinion, without making cuts in pensions, you cannot really be safe.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts, ACDC, on this topic before we move on?
I'm just going to say one last thing. I think Elon also, he either replied or posted, but he said something to the point that if this spending continues, the country will fail and nothing else matters. Okay, so this is a primary focus of his, and this is definitely going to happen, and we're going to see it.
Sorry, can you say that last part again?
I was just saying that it's a big focus of his, and it's definitely something that will be implemented.
Okay. All right, let's talk some stocks that are kind of high flying. I think it's I'm really interested in the, unless you want to say something about, actually, let's cover Tesla first, and then we can go back to the high flying stocks. Any new thoughts on V13? Any updated thoughts, ACDC or Luce?
I just, so I kind of wanted to just talk FSD. I wish Wes was here, or at least in the beginning part of it, and really pick his brain, because I just did a 20-mile drive each way, so a round trip. And like I told you before, I usually just use FSD for long drives, but I had a little time this morning, so I said, you know what? I told myself I'm not going to disengage. I'm going to bear with it, and I'm going to go through with it. So I made sure that it chose local roads, okay, instead of taking the expressway. And wow, it was kind of unbearable at times, you know, when your car's going like at 32 in a 40-mile-per-hour zone. Okay, I strived through that itself, but I had 2 disengagements on the way there. Both were related due to mapping. One, it just took a turn literally into a dead-end street and just came to a stop, you know. The second was on a 25-mile-per-hour local street, made a turn after a stop sign, literally just pulled over and parked. There was like this, you know, like parking on the side of the road, and it just pulled over and parked. This was a first timer for me. It has never, ever happened before. And then on the way back, I had, so these are both 2 mapping issues. And on the way back, I had another 2 disengagements. One was on a left turn, you know, how sometimes they have like a left turn lane, but then they also have kind of like a little grayed out area in between. It stood out in the grayed out. It went into the grayed out area. It mistook it as it's a 2-lane left turn. Okay, so I had to disengage it there. And then on a red light, where I was waiting for a left turn, the left turn signal came on and it just paused. And there's like people honking at me, like, come on, like, you know. So I just messaged Dirty Tesla. He just asked, like, hey, any questions on V13? And my biggest question to him, I'll do the other stuff. Like, I can bear with it. I understand the progress and the improvements, you know, are happening. But my question is about the mapping, really, you know. He said, do you want to know anything about V13? And I want to know if the mapping is any better in V13, because all the training and compute, I can understand that it's going to take time and we're doing it, right? But what about the mapping? Like, isn't that something that can be done without training? Does that need training? Like, isn't that just a switch? Like, do they need better maps? Do they need better routes? I just don't understand that. So I'd love to hear from Wes or somebody else who's an expert.
Okay. If anybody in the audience has thoughts on that, you're welcome to request to speak, and we can talk about it. My understanding, ACDC, is that Tesla does rely on maps to a certain extent, but not nearly to the extent that Waymo or Cruise do. So, and the longer term goal is to rely less and less on maps. I think the 3 times lengthening of the context window will help with what you're describing, some of the mapping issues. And that's not yet in V13.2. That's an upcoming improvement that they included in the release notes. Does that help?
It helps, but kind of, I guess it kind of helps. Are you saying the new context window is going to help it understand the routes better?
No. So, for example, let's say, for example, that FSD can think maybe 5 seconds ahead today. Okay, so you may have to get into, it may not decide to turn into a lane or get into the right lane until it's too late, whether because of traffic or some other issue with that intersection. If it can plan ahead 10 seconds, 15 seconds, then you may be able to handle, I mean, it's still going to be able to handle more complex scenarios after that change. I think that's going to come through sometime in 2025. And then I think you'll have a much better experience, especially given complex scenarios where you require further planning ahead. I don't think the issues will go away, like all the way to zero with V13, but I think you'll see a better handling of complex scenarios once you have that context window tripling sometime in 2025.
Right, but like I said, it's I mean, I guess I don't know if it's a mapping. I think it's more like a route and navigation is what it is, right? Because these weren't complex scenarios. I mean, the navigation is telling you to go straight on the street, and all of a sudden decides to take a left into this no outlet street. And the other one, you know, where the map is showing you that, hey, you got to keep going here, and it just decides to pull over and just park, right? So I don't know what that arises from, but it's done that more so in the last couple builds for me. Even locally, it'll like it's got a straight route. That's what the navigation says, but then it'll take like a turn into like a subdivision, go around, and then pull itself out, and then get to the destination. So
Okay. Would you classify any of those as safety critical?
the two mapping ones where pull aside and went into the no outlet road, no. But the other one where it was trying to make a left turn, you know, it thought there's two lanes to turn left. I mean, I had to disengage it, right? What if I had let it go? So what does it do? Does it try to squeeze in between other cars and maybe it lets the other cars go? So I don't know. That's what I was kind of debating with you. That are those safety criticals? The other one where it did not go on a green light, is that really safety critical? I guess not. So safety critical, no, not really. But I mean, in terms of usability, I mean, we definitely need to get up there. I mean, all the rest of the drive, it's great. It's awesome. I mean, I'm not afraid of any curbs, any objects, anything. I mean, it goes over potholes, which is fine. But usability is, I mean, the comfort is great in terms of that. But usability, I don't know. I mean, I will continue to use it only 20% of the time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think once we have this context window, I think things will improve dramatically. But I don't think it's going to be ready for Robotaxi for another few years after that. Luce, go ahead.
AI Driver made a very long and informative video on V13. And I have to say that improvements are there. There are also many things that still needs to be improved. For example, in a suburbs area, which he tested it, basically it parked in the middle of the road. It goes in private roads, doesn't understand it. Like there are many things still to be improved. And another thing is the sun. The sun blinds the cameras, which doesn't make it see reds. And yeah, so many things still have to be improved, but improvements obviously are there.
Okay, Luce, when do you think Tesla will have tens of thousands of, so Waymo is expanding to Miami. I think they are testing in about 10 cities right now, pretty rapidly. So I think they're going to get to about 10 cities sometime in 2025. And really, when you think about rideshare demand, it's concentrated in the top cities. It's not in rural areas. It's not in the Midwest cities. It's along the coasts. And I pulled up a list of top 20 cities using ChatGPT with the population. That's pretty much where your demand is going to be. And here's the list at the top of our screens. Number 1, New York. Number 2, LA. So LA, Waymo is already in LA. Number 3 is Chicago. 4 is Houston. If you look at this list, all major Texas cities are in top 12. So you have Fort Worth, Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, Houston. I mean, that's really the number of cities. So Texas is a big one. And that, that's good for Tesla, right? I don't think New York will probably see much of a robotaxi, given the issues with taxi drivers and how much power they have in New York City. So I don't think Manhattan will have, and it's also very challenging for robotaxis. So I don't think Manhattan will have robotaxis for a while. But it's already in LA. Texas is going to come up soon across Texas. What else is here? Florida. So we just saw Miami. I mean, Miami isn't on this list, but I think Florida will see a rapid expansion as well, just like Texas. I think they already have a statewide law for that allows robotaxis anyway. And then California. You have San Diego. That's probably going to be one of the next ones. So I think we'll see. I mean, Waymo already has several hundred vehicles going around, and they're increasing their number of trips, weekly number of trips, very rapidly as well. Sundar Pichai was, Waymo is owned by Google. Sundar was on the Deal Book interview with Andrew Russell. So I watched that last night, the night before I watched Sam Altman's interview. Very interesting comments by both. And I highly recommend people watch these direct interviews by these people, because what you hear and see from our third parties, whether it's traditional media or some X account that's friendly to one side or another, just doesn't represent what they're saying. So I highly recommend people watch it. Sundar is very proud of Waymo. I think they're very committed to Waymo. I think they're going to continue to spend a lot of money there. And Google is vertically integrated when it comes to this, even more than Tesla, in a way. Tesla uses transformers that were created by the Google team. Okay. So I think Waymo is going to be a major player. And they already have, $5 billion additional capital. So I think the expansion going forward is probably going to be rapid, more rapid than people expect. So to this morning, I posted a poll that asked people, do you think Waymo or Tesla will get to top 10 cities? And Waymo is basically halfway already, and Tesla hasn't even started. So at the top of our screens is the poll. Who will launch robotaxis in top 10 cities first? 25% people said Waymo, 75% people said Tesla. So consistently, we're seeing poll after poll, whether my polls or other people's polls, you're seeing a really heavy bias to results that just like completely unreasonable. That's obviously not going to happen, and that goes to show I think the level of kind of mania in this stock and other stock, as we're going to discuss in a little bit. But ACDC, what are your thoughts on Waymo versus FSD right now?
Yeah, so I mean, Waymo is already. I mean, yes, we can call them the more expensive solution for this, but at least their solution is in the works, right? And one of some of the key advantages you were saying that Google has, another one is also mapping. And Google Maps. I think Tesla also actually uses Google Maps underneath. And
right.
But I think it's also like an older version of Google Maps. Like it's something that is not the latest thing on Google Maps. And if you look at it right now, if you were to use Google Maps, it can already tell you traffic conditions and everything right on your phone. And it uses, GPS and handset congestion metrics, right? Where all of a sudden on the crossing, there's like 200 handsets that are pinging to one place. Then Google knows, okay, there's traffic there, and it'll show it to you, right? So similarly, like how Tesla is announcing that in V13, it can now tell you construction, if there's a construction road closure to avoid it. Google can also know that, right? If this is a commonly traveled route, but there's nothing going through there, then they can flag it off as, okay, that's a closed route now, right? So they have a lot of key advantages in that, and I think they're definitely ahead of the game. A lot of people like to say my FSD is driving. Hey, my car drives me. My car drives me. Well, if Tesla itself believed that FSD is there already, they could have started this testing, right? They could have started this testing with on a supervised basis, where people are actually doing it actively and charging fares and everything, where most of the driving is being done by FSD just on a supervised level. But Tesla hasn't done it. So I think Tesla itself realizes that there's a road, and they're getting up on there. It's just that they're not there yet.
All right, thank you. Learn code.
Hey, Yaman. I just wanted to ask, do you think that's really the right question to ask, whether who gets to 10 cities first? Because as you said, Waymo, you don't think Waymo could be profitable. So if I would argue it's more important that Tesla can prove safety in just one city by the time Waymo gets to 10, because once Tesla does it in one, it will rapidly scale. Waymo can't rapidly scale like that. So isn't that the better question to ask?
No, because I think Tesla will have a similar. I mean, they said they're gonna have to go through Austin first, and then LA second. San Francisco and Austin. And it looks like so far they're gonna have to go through the same local regulatory, start, test, verify, and then roll out city by city, unless Trump is able to do some sort of nationwide release. That's, I guess, maybe one way Tesla can go ahead. But the thing is, Waymo right now is about 4 or 5 cities, and I think they're testing in about 10 cities. Okay. So, and if you remember, I think Tesla will take another several years to get to 99.9999% reliability. And I think in 2025 alone, by the end of 2025, I think Waymo is going to be in 10 cities. So where they're going to be, probably next 20, 30 cities by the time Tesla has the technology. So now the question becomes, who has the better inference compute efficiency? Who can build better models? Who's going to have the next, like, for example, when Google, like, I don't know if anybody watched Sam Altman or Sundar Pichai. Okay. They agree with me. If you read between the lines a little bit, they agree with me that you're going to need an algorithmic breakthrough to get to the next stage. Like, for example, Sundar said yesterday, low-hanging fruits are picked. The next stage is going to be more difficult. He does expect continued progress on AI, but it sounds like even the people who are trying to do this are kind of starting to voice that scaling laws aren't going to be as robust in the future as they were in the past. Okay. Now, I don't know if that applies to Tesla. I think it does. I don't know if that applies to XAI. I think it does. Gavin Baker says we're going to know more when XAI has trained Grok 3. So some of these things are still TBD. But if you do need an algorithmic breakthrough, and you can't just do it by buying tens of billions of dollars of compute, that's a 0 to 1 problem. That's not just a scaling problem. So you have to discount these ambitions in the future according to that. Now, which team do you think is more likely to come up with an algorithmic breakthrough? Do you think Tesla team is more likely to come up with an algorithm like transformers? Or do you think the Google team who owns Waymo? And if Google team comes up with it first, is Waymo more likely to benefit from that, or is Tesla? Because my understanding is that Google didn't realize how transformative that transformers were going to be when they released that paper. So do you think they're going to do it again next time? Remember, transformers came about with attention is all you need, which I believe was a 2020 paper. Let me just confirm that real quick. Attention is all you need is 2017. Okay, version 1. All right. That was 5 years before ChatGPT. Only with ChatGPT, Google started feeling a bit like, okay, we're kind of being, threatened a little bit. Our business is being threatened. I mean, back in 2017, and even as recently as like a year ago, people thought Google was invincible. You know, a lot of people thought Google was invincible, and now they're feeling the heat. So, do you think they're going to be as lovey-dovey, sharing their next level of technology, learn code? What do you think?
What do I think? Do I think Google will share technology?
Well, let's go step by step. So, what I just discussed. Do you think there's an algorithmic breakthrough necessary for the next step change, like 1,000x improvement for FSD reliability, or do you think scaling laws alone can get Tesla to robotaxis?
That's a good question. I think we'll know when we see data from FSD 13. If it triples critical disengagements, then we're on track to be fully FSD within 5 years, before 5 years. If we can keep tripling it, like if FSD 14 triples. So I think that would really depend on what we see with 13.
Okay, well, I mean, if it takes 5 years, though, you have a problem because Waymo is already in 4 or 5 cities and
But
they're
you said it wasn't
testing
profitable.
beyond. That doesn't mean they're not going to get to profitability, one, and two, they don't need to get to profitability to limit Tesla's margins. Like, look at Rivian. Rivian has no future. Rivian will go bankrupt. Okay, I'm 99% probable, 99% certain about this. Rivian will go bankrupt. But look at what it's doing to Tesla's margins. Just because people can get the R1T and the R1S, just because when Elon speaks his mind, they can go around and go to a company that has some sort of viable product that people like. Not financially viable, but it goes a distance, 300, 400 miles. It does have the acceleration. It has better interior quality, etc. Right? Just because there's that option available, Rivian customers don't know the gross margin of Rivian. They don't care, but the option is available. So if Waymo is available, even if it's running break even, owned by a company that has tens of billions of dollars of cash, generating tens of, you have to stay on mute when I'm talking. So it doesn't, like, they're losing billions of dollars, but if they get to break even, and they don't have to get to break even, just their presence alone would limit Robotaxi's profitability. Do you disagree with that statement?
Yeah, I don't. What's the point of running just to break even? And I don't even know if they could do that, because I think Tesla could be so much cheaper, and I don't think people are going to drive. I mean, you might buy a car if you're a rich guy. You might buy a Rivian that's twice as expensive and not care. First of all, I would care about the gross margins of Rivian, because I wouldn't buy a car from a company that I think is going out of business. But that's a separate point. But why would Waymo continue to scale if they're not making money? And Tesla could undercut them.
Yes, I'll tell you why.
Most
So they're
people-
collecting data, and a lot of Tesla will say, Optimus is
Well,
advantage because of all the data that Tesla's collected from the cars. Why don't you think that's possible for Waymo?
Why don't I think what's possible?
That Waymo could be collecting data that benefits in the other businesses, like mapping, or maybe some sort of a business they can come up with humanoids.
Okay, but then you have to say Tesla could do that same thing, and then you would have to add some sort of business value for that, right?
You're already adding value for Optimus. Okay. So I think that your premise was that Waymo will not continue. Google will not continue to scale Waymo, despite all the evidence against it. They already have invested another $5 billion. So you're completely disregarding that fact, and you're telling me that Google is unlikely to continue to scale Waymo. How does that make any sense?
I mean, no, if they can get to profitability, then sure. Just like I don't know if they can or not. I'm saying we know Tesla's approach is cheaper. I think, but we also know just like we know Waymo can drive. We don't know yet if Tesla, it hasn't been proven if Tesla can drive, and it hasn't been proven if Waymo can be profitable. So maybe, obviously, if they're profitable, then they will compete against Tesla. But I think they have a lot going against them, not only in what they're doing now with City, but especially in shipping across the country.
Tell me why. Why are you certain that Tesla is going to cost less per mile than Waymo?
Because first of all, other than the fact that they build the car and they don't have as many sensors. I mean, it's common sense. And then unless Waymo gets rid of that giant moving LiDAR, do you know how much drag that's going to be on the highway? Like, Tesla is going to have a massive advantage. It's almost like,
dude, Chinese automakers are already surrounding their vehicles with LiDAR, multiple LiDARs that doesn't have that size. I mean, do you think the size of the LiDAR will continue to be as big? Do you think they're going to continue to need as many sensors 5-10 years from today?
So why isn't Waymo doing that?
Well, the technology, they're developing technology, right?
So can they drive as good as Waymo with that same LiDAR, or is it inferior in some way? There's got to be a trade-off. Or are they just saying they're way better than Waymo?
Right now, I think the Chinese automakers are more of an ADAS. But my point is that the LiDAR technology will continue to improve, especially if the price is measured in hundreds of billions of dollars. So LiDAR technology will continue to improve. If the cost will come down, the sizes will come down. Waymo will need fewer and fewer sensors. So just look at the sizes of these things about 10 years ago from the Apple car and even Waymo cars. And Waymo has been reducing their sensors as well. Not as fast as some of the people thought in this space before, Waymo proponents. I guessing that they would have liked to reduce it further, but I think that it's a bit. I think it's like, let's not jump to conclusions that Waymo cannot continue to reduce sensor counts.
Yeah, I'm not jumping to conclusions. I don't think it can't. I just don't know if you compared it to the Chinese LiDAR. If it was that much better, why don't they just buy the LiDAR from the Chinese? I think that LiDAR is probably not as good as the one Waymo's using. The trade-off is maybe it's sleeker, less expensive. And you're right. I'm sure Waymo will continue to improve, and maybe they'll get to profitability. I don't know. But it's the same way I don't know if FSD will ever fully be solved camera base. I mean, it's yet to be proven either way. But I thought you said the other day when I asked you, I said, will Waymo ever be profitable? You said no. You said they'll just be collecting data. So I was just saying, if you think Waymo, not what I think, if you think Waymo will never be profitable.
Well, but like I said earlier, it doesn't matter if they're profitable or not. Okay, if they're slightly loss making. So obviously there's going to be some scale benefits here. Obviously, the number of cars per teleoperator will continue to increase, and they're going to get rid of some sensors. The compute will continue to decline in cost. At some point, if they stick it out, which they seems like they're going to continue to invest into this business, at some point they're going to become at a level where maybe the data they're collecting that they will leverage in other businesses like maps or maybe some sort of service for humanoids or something will be more valuable than the slight loss they may be making in the Waymo business. So I'm not saying they're going to become profitable. I think it's possible. I'm not saying they're going to stay unprofitable either. But what I'm saying is that that's not what matters. As long as they exist, and I think we have ample evidence now that they will continue to exist 5-10 years from today. That is still a concern for Robotaxi margins for Tesla.
Okay, but if you're going to say that this data is so valuable that you can run at cost for robots, then Tesla is already worth way more than what it is today, because Tesla's data is going to be just as valuable and they're going to have way more cars. So what value in this worst case scenario where Waymo can't even make a profit, but its data is so valuable, that means Tesla's is valuable. That to me makes Tesla even more valuable. It doesn't even need FSD. Maybe it can run on no margins. And then Waymo couldn't exist. Tesla gets the data if that's so valuable, you know?
Okay. I feel like we run out of circles. So let's go to ACDC. ACDC.
I didn't get that point that why is Tesla's data more valuable, but I mean, Tesla's collecting new data. I think it's the new data that's more valuable, not all the 10 years of data that they have been collecting necessarily. It's the new disengagements that pop up, the edge cases that they need, which are fewer now, so it's even tougher. Whereas Waymo is actually getting more of those cases directly, through their unsupervised cars. So I didn't quite understand that, but to the point that, Waymo being scalable, I think we can't discount that. It's definitely a possibility. I think the way they started, if you look at the cars that they use, is the Jaguar F-Type, I think. That's not a cheap car, right? And with all the sensors, the LiDARs and everything, whether it's larger, older, and all that, they haven't reached their final stage yet. They're still experimenting with it, and we don't know what the finished product is going to look like in 3 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
They could scale a lot of those sensors. They could scale back from that F type to a $30,000 car. They could give that technology to an automaker who could implement that. So, and in the meantime, they'll have the dominance of being in 10 markets or 15 different markets, and a name recognition that's the cab, that's the autonomous cab, so they have a lot of things working for them. So I don't think we can discount them entirely.
Yeah. And then LearnCode, the other thing is Waymo is more vertically integrated when it comes to this stuff than Tesla because, or in a way, obviously they don't produce their vehicles and stuff, but in a way they are, because they produce their own tensor processing units, which is obviously a huge cost for Tesla right now. Tesla is paying billions and billions of dollars of profits to NVIDIA to buy the GPUs. And Google doesn't have that expense because they're vertically, they do most of their training. I think they said 90% of their training on the TPUs. So I don't really agree with the premise that Tesla will definitely be lower cost per mile. LearnCode?
I just wanted to address clarify the data comment. I didn't say Tesla had better data. I said they could get more data because they have more cars on the road, and that would lead to better data. But my point is if Waymo's data is very valuable, that means Tesla's is very valuable as well. And I don't think
you're missing the point. Nobody's saying
ACDC.
No, you're missing the point. Nobody's saying Waymo's data will be more valuable, that they can continue to run it at a loss. It's just a possibility. Okay.
Yeah, I said that. I thought ACDC said that I said Tesla's data was more valuable. I didn't say that. That's all I was clarifying. I think they're
no, just to clarify. So what I meant is that we can't discount what Waymo is doing.
Yeah, I agree. I don't disagree.
Okay, Luce?
So even if Waymo was not able to scale and let's say compete with Tesla in the next 5 years, let's say, there is going to be a point in which the AI technology will improve so much and the compute, the ability of having high compute for low cost will improve so much that at some point there is going to be competition. And so even discounting for Waymo, Tesla as well will face competition from, in the future, but regardless.
Yeah. LearnCode, are you all invested in Tesla?
No.
Why are you so passionate about defending the company.
No, I'm not. I'm actually not trying to defend the company necessarily. I just thought I was just pointing out. I thought you said, you in your own words said Waymo wouldn't be profitable. So I thought if you were short and you thought Waymo would not be profitable, then obviously Tesla would have a huge advantage the second it gets into one city. So I was just making that point. Yes, I'm a Tesla bull and fan, but I'm not trying to just defend them now.
Okay.
I don't know if Waymo will be profitable. It might be.
Okay. Let's go around and take your guesses. When will Tesla have tens of thousands of driverless vehicles on the road in US? Learn code. Let's start with you.
I really want to see what I think within 5 years. 5 years, I would say. I would be disappointed if in 5 years that didn't happen.
Okay, so tens of thousands in by 2029.
Sure, end of 2029. Sure.
Man, that is a bearish forecast. Like, that's what I don't understand. If Tesla takes 5 years to get to tens of thousands, that supports my view about the company's valuation.
I mean, I'm pretty conservative, but when do you think that gets priced into the stock? I mean, that would be a doubling every 6 months. So if people start seeing a doubling in every 6 months, I think that's getting, like, think of in a year from now, every 6 months it's doubled. I think people are going to price it in how many years out?
Yeah, I guess that's the question. I mean, do you think the market will start pricing in this future by Tesla many years ahead of the time? I think as long as Waymo is expanding, that's not going to happen. I think most of the market today believes Waymo is ahead in the race. And outside of Tesla bulls, I would say 99% of the market believes Waymo is ahead. And as long as they are around and expanding, especially in an environment where you have high interest rates, where people market values the near-term cash flows more than the farther out cash flows, I wouldn't expect the market to start pricing in Tesla robotaxis. So if you're thinking 5 years out, and by the way, if it's like 20,000 robotaxis, that's not a lot of money to the bottom line anyway.
I think if once it's solved, it just doesn't matter because it's just going to happen quickly, especially if there is a federal autonomous driving type of regulations, and it's easier to get through under Trump. I just think the only thing that matters is once they could solve it and prove it in one city. That's all that matters to me.
Yeah, that's what AI driver says too. But I think that's going to prove wrong. And the reason is because, especially if it takes 5 years out, and now you have tens of thousands of Waymos and tens of thousands of some other technology, maybe Zooks. Like if Waymo gets there, then why couldn't other companies with LiDAR can get there too? Cruise is also bringing their service back online, as I understand it. So they're not really completely out of the game yet. And so these are TBD. I'm sure there's going to be other businesses as well. So let's say, for example, you have 20,000 robotaxis. Okay. And let's say they're able to make $20,000 per robotaxi per year. That's only $400 million, dude. That's only $400 million. And that's not the only competition. Okay. So you're getting so excited and worked up about $400 million 5 years from today. That's insane. And that's gross profit. There's going to be operating expenses associated with that. And there's going to be taxes taken out of that. So The other thing is the cost per mile of transportation will continue to decline because Tesla isn't the only company producing EVs, and Tesla isn't the company that has the lowest cost to produce EVs either. So a human driver paid minimum wage driving an EV or a hybrid will also be competition for Tesla Robotaxis 5 years from today, if not also from 10 years from today. So I think you're just ignoring all these possibilities. Go ahead.
So I disagree, because if they have tens of thousands of working robotaxis, I personally think hardware 4 will be able to be a robotaxi. So once they have the data to show the regulators, here's our 20,000 robotaxis, we haven't had a crash in X miles, I do think it's not going to be as easy as flipping on a switch. I'm sure it'll take a little bit of time, but they'll be able to leverage their existing fleet. And I don't know where you came up with the number of 20. Did you come up with the number 20,000 a year? Is that what you said? I mean, I think they'll be able to make their steering wheelless car obviously more than the Model Y if they want to. I don't see why they wouldn't.
Yeah, I think, for consumer purchases, you may be right, but I think the demand for robotaxis, like, how many, just a few hundred Waymos in San Francisco seems to be doing fine. So 10,000 is my cap for a metropolis area in terms of one company's robotaxi, because there's going to be other robotaxis. There's going to be Uber drivers, personal transportation, like personal ownership cars aren't going to go away overnight. So yeah, I see where the disconnect is. Go ahead.
I just think that there will be a lot more demand, obviously, if the price is, less than half of a Waymo. So there'll be more than 10,000 in a city.
Okay. ACDC or Luce, anything to add here?
Yeah, so I kind of did the same math. And even if you take it from 10,000 to 20,000, even if you take it to 50,000, I think I was going up to 100,000 taxis. And if you compare it to the revenue, it's still not much. And if we're already talking about like 5 years out for tens of thousands, to get to even 100,000, it's a lot more. I think Waymo has a total of about 2,500, 2,700 total everywhere. So I just don't see it, as a big revenue stream. And at some point of time, the market has to see it. NVIDIA, that just didn't go up because, oh my God, everybody was like, oh, the Blackwell's coming, or they kept producing and delivering on their earnings and beating and raising guidance, right? So that's what eventually the street has to see to justify the valuation and take it higher, further higher. So that's going to be a while. I'm actually a little bit more bullish in terms of, I was going to say maybe in 3 years, 2028, 10,000 taxis could be out there. And that's a pretty aggressive stance on my part. But so I'm more bullish on that side, but I'm a lot more bearish on the valuation side because of that.
Luce?
I understand all the point of learn code, and I think he's right. But the problem is that the bull case for Tesla is not that it's going to happen in 5 years, because 5 years is too late. There could be so much competition, and the future at that point, it's very hard to predict. The bull case for Tesla is that it's going to happen next year, 2 years maximum. And so basically you are correct, but 5 years from now is not such a big opportunity as it's now being counted.
Oh my God. You are forbidden, Luce, from arguing the bull case from now on, because you do a really shitty job about it. And we have a lot of bulls to argue the bull case if they want to. Bull case for Tesla is not just robotaxis becoming in 2 years, right? I mean, how
Yeah,
many
well,
versions of the bull case can you? Go ahead. Why don't you show us your bull case abilities? Count 3 ways Tesla stock can increase.
well, in 2 years, Robotaxi, Optimus, and that's it. But Optimus is in the same situation of FSD. I mean, if it happens in 5 years, 10 years, it's too late.
Okay, so let's say Optimus and Robotaxi is one of them. What about second and third?
Tesla Live becomes bullish, then the stock's gonna go higher.
Okay. What about lower interest rates, like macroeconomic, all the rising tide raises all boats argument?
Only if the tax credit is gonna stay in place, because the impact of the tax credit is higher than any cut in the interest rate.
Well, that's not true. I can already prove that wrong because interest rates surged. Tax credit came about the same time available for Tesla's vehicles, and we saw what happened to demand and revenue growth. So that's probably not true. I think interest rates are probably more important than EV tax credits going away. Go ahead.
Well, Yaman, you say this, but did you see what happened in Germany when they basically made their own discount of 6,000 and tried to cap the volume? But not only now they made 6,000 less dollars, but also the deliveries were down 40%. Like, how can you
Yeah, I
say
mean, Germany is a different market. Like, it's not totally analogous. That may happen here or not, but one thing that's unique to Germany and Europe in general is that there is honestly, the entire Europe is as liberal as California, is my take so far. And then, so that's one impact. And then secondly, Chinese automakers are penetrating European market, and they're not entering the US market at all. So that's one factor. And also, there's a lot more hybrids in Europe than in the US. And now, by the way, this is news, or news to me, I guess. But the tariffs that Europe put on Chinese automaker EVs imports do not apply to hybrids. So Chinese automakers are exporting hybrids to Europe now. And that's a massive headwind to Tesla, as far as I'm concerned, because you also don't have the benefit of FSD in Europe. So I wouldn't expect, and you don't have Cybertruck in Europe. So I wouldn't expect any sort of bounce in European sales of Tesla anytime soon. So I think interest rate, back to our original discussion, I think interest rates weigh a lot more. So that's one positive, or let's say upside scenario for Tesla stock, is interest rates coming down at a rapid pace, all the loan rates coming down at a rapid pace, and a rising tide lifting all boats. Now there are a bunch of other bull case scenarios I can present, but I just want to point out, Luce, that you're having a very difficult time listing potential upside scenarios for Tesla stock. And as a speaker, I really need you to do better on that front. You have to be less biased, more balanced, and present both sides of the story. And there are other, like I said, there are other scenarios as well. Like, for example, you can make a case around Tesla Energy. You can say something like Trump will enact some sort of nationwide policy around batteries, and it's going to kind of unclog that waiting line. You make a case around PayPal mafia is essentially being the entire White House right now. If you look at David Sachs becoming the AI and crypto czar, Elon and Vivek are doing DOGE and meeting with senators and reps and everything. Trump essentially is like a whole PayPal mafia, and look, they should kind of include him to the list at this point. And then and there's going to be others as well. Like Palantir is going to, I mean, some of the surge in Palantir stock is obviously part of that too. So So Tesla is going to get a massive tailwind from on the regulatory front. So you can make a case around it as well on the bull side, right? ACDC?
Yeah, so on that front, here's one thing that Trump could do, and I think it's possible that instead of putting back or leaving the EV credit, what he could do, and he's talked about it a little bit, is give credits to autos that are made, whether it's 70%, 80%, or 90% in the United States, kind of like a Patriot credit. And that would be beneficial to Tesla.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing around that is, obviously this is a global market, and if you're basing your cash flows into just one country, that's a tough sell for a portfolio manager, I think. And then there are there's a number of bear cases too, and I think bear cases are underpriced. Bull cases are overly emphasized, in my opinion. But anyway, okay, that was fun. Well, let's ask Learn Code. Now that I asked Luce to give me the bull cases, let's ask Learn Code. What are the bear cases? Top 3 bear cases. Learn Code.
Are you asking like what like my conservative cases? Or are you asking like
what are the factors that will lead to a stock price decline in the next 12 months?
I mean, I think selling less cars, obviously, and showing, if FSD 13 doesn't show good progress, like if it only goes up like an extra 20 miles or something like that, something small, I think that would be very concerning for the best case scenario of Tesla. Is mostly FSD, but yeah, obviously in the short term, if they sell less cars or if margins are declining, then that would affect the stock negatively.
All right, let me take some notes from YouTube live chat, and then I'm going to ask ACDC to list top 3 bull and bear scenarios. Learn Code. If you don't mute yourself when you're not talking, I will move you down to listen mode. Second warning, and that's not many people get 2 warnings. All right. Marty says hardware 5 is key to me. I think this extra compute will enable level 4 autonomy. Okay. Low profile. Tesla might be reaching 400 by the end of the year. Okay. Marty Party says Cybertruck will start with hardware 5 computers and cameras. Okay. Marty says autonomous driving market is big enough to support 2 companies. And yes, of course, that's true, right? But that's also true for that's the same argument people made about vehicles. And don't worry about Rivian. Don't worry about these other companies that are building EVs or announcing EVs, and that we know what that did to raw material prices. Lithium prices surged because there was hundreds of Me Too companies, and now they're discounting their vehicles in the market, capping Tesla's margins. Like Tesla automotive margins are down to levels that I'd never even imagined today. So, the market is big, but obviously you want to invest in companies that have, as Peter Thiel puts it, monopolistic power, basically. Andy asks ACDC question: where is BC and CC? Is ACDC an American band, or are they British? ACDC? Australian. That's right. Never mind. Right?
I actually did not know that. I just considered
What?
them an American band. Yeah, I mean, I'm not that big. ACDC is for the voltage, really, and I just put it on there because, that's what the premise of Tesla is. It takes AC voltage and converts it into DC voltage.
Oh,
But I
thought
do
you were
love
a
the
fan of
band. I love the band. No. It kind of like went with both, so I went with it. So yeah.
Okay, never mind. Let's see. Henry has a question about MicroStrategy, so we can maybe switch to other stocks in a little bit. Let's see. Marty says, I think Tesla Semi will drive down costs of delivering goods with or without autonomy. Using the Tesla Semi will be a must for trucking companies. Yeah, I think 4680 is going to be interesting. Like even, I mean, the semi market is, I think about 1 million in US and 3 million around the world, Class 8 semi. And Tesla's starting with a target of 50,000 vehicles per year, which is a very small level. So, and I think that's because 4680 is just behind schedule in terms of costs. I don't know. Marty says another bull case is BYD licenses Tesla's FSD. That's a huge bull case. I don't think BYD is going to license Tesla's FSD. I don't think anybody's going to license Tesla's FSD. Especially BYD, because they would just go with, Baidu or some Chinese company, some Chinese technology, I think. And BYD is already putting some LiDAR around their vehicles. So if I remember correctly, I think it was them. Let me just check real quick. BYD, a Chinese EV manufacturer, has recently launched several models with LiDAR sensors, including the Seal, 2025 Seal, and 2025 Han. So yeah. And these are very cheap vehicles. Like people assume Waymo's vehicles cost a lot, but that's probably because they're only producing a few hundred of them. Once you get to volume manufacturing, those costs will come down dramatically. At ACDC, what are the top 3 bull cases and then bear cases? And then we're going to switch to other stocks.
Wow, so bull cases is tough, but my 3 bull cases are, like I mentioned, something like a Patriot Act enacted for U.S. manufacturing. The second bull case would be something like the macro environment, including interest rates that could boost pretty much the whole market. And the third one, it's a little less, but I don't hear many people talking about it, and I don't know exactly the numbers. As of right now, it's not much, but they just announced something on the regulatory front that they're going to NACS will be the standard for the United States for charging, for EV charging. So Tesla's already deployed, and they already manufacture some of the cheapest chargers, most efficient chargers. And if they really expanded on that, I mean, Tesla could literally be the gas stations, right? They could be the BPs, the Chevrons, and whatever for the entire country in that way. And there's a pretty healthy margin. I know they still have to secure electricity, but there's still a healthy margin. I mean, it's a good business, right? That's why gas stations also, even though they operate on lower margins, they still make money. And the oil company and everybody else is making money in there too. So there could be a pretty decent margin in there in due time. So that's the other thing that I can kind of think in a lower scale, but long-term bull case.
Okay, can you repeat the first one?
The first one was what I mentioned as if something like a Patriot Act is enacted, where U.S. manufacturing is given a boost or a credit.
Okay.
Bear cases, I could really go on. I think the FSD traction, whether it's adoption or implementation to cybercabs, I think it's a ways out. So it seems like it's already priced into the stock at a very aggressive level. And I think that's a bear case for it. Same thing with Optimus. I don't even know how much of that is priced in, but when Morgan Stanley, Bank of America guys are talking about that more than they are talking about the cybercab, then I guess that they're also pricing that in there. And the third thing is energy. I kind of talked about it. I think Wes Hicks was here arguing against it, but I've never really looked at personally. I'm not the most knowledgeable person when it comes to the energy business of Tesla, but as far as the mega packs go, right, it's mostly used into stabilization of grid and so on forth. So I actually see the energy grid overall in the country stabilizing already in the coming years, because we're going to go back on a lot of regulations which have actually reduced energy production in this country. And it's not oil, it's coal and everything else for the push of, renewables. So I don't think that really actually helps Tesla on the energy side.
Okay, thank you. Wes is here, and maybe we can ask your questions to him if he can come up to speak about FSD questions. Palantir continues to rise. Any views on Palantir ACDC?
I don't. I can't speak to it. I haven't looked at it. Like I said, when you had the speaker on a few months ago.
There's an account here that I'm going to go to Wes in a second, but there's an account here. Amit is investing. He follows Palantir pretty closely. So he says, why do you think Palantir is up $10 billion in market cap today? Very simple answer. Who is Alan Hamilton deal we got this morning, along with David Sachs being appointed to the AI czar by Trump, is potential leading the market to believe the government growth might end up being much, much larger than people think. BAH, one of the biggest government defense contractors, now working with Palantir. David Sachs, best friends with Peter Thiel, has publicly praised Palantir and has said he owns the stock, cares about government efficiency, and is also best friends with Elon, who may be looking to use software to save money for the government. Now we have the QQQ rebalance next week, which I think people feel is a good job of having the LTR get in. Interesting. Okay.
I'll tell you one thing, hats off to Amit, because he's been talking and promoting Palantir since it was in its low 20s.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You want to ask a question to Wes?
Sure. Hey, Wes. So Wes, I was just relaying this to Yaman. I'm going to try to make it concise. It's hard for me to do so, but I had a couple disengagements this morning on 12.5.6.3. It was like a 20-mile drive, all local, and the first disengagement was when it kind of like disobeyed the navigation route and it just made a turn left into a dead-end street. Okay. The second disengagement was a few miles later. It made a right turn after a stop sign, and it literally just pulled over and parked. So my question was, is this a mapping issue that I'm seeing this or not? And then depending on that, I have a follow-up question on that.
Yeah, I've seen this too. It basically will try to kind of optimize over the navigation route when you get close to a destination. So I've only seen this in those scenarios. I've never seen it like make a wrong turn off of navigation when it's not close to the destination. So that's where I see that problem happening. And it just kind of has too high of a reward function for getting there quickly over following the navigation route, because the navigation route will always provide it a known path to get there. And that's coming from, I believe it's coming from the Google Maps API. So I'm hopeful that that resolves itself in V13. There you go.
So both of these issues were like midway through the route. And the second one where it just pulled over and just parked, right? That can't be based on a reward basis, because if it's trying to get there in the most efficient fashion, then, and it didn't like tell me that, okay, you're at your destination or anything. It just pulled up and it just parked while the navigation is telling it still like, hey, you got 6 more miles to go.
I can't say I've seen that. That sounds very odd. And you say this has happened more than once?
This is the first time it happened. That was the first time I ever had a disengagement like that, where it literally just pulled up. I mean, I had to do a retake. I'm like looking around. I'm like, am I already here? I'm like, no way.
Yeah, that's super odd. It's so odd that I can't really kind of begin to tell you what's going on. I would need to just know a lot more details, or potentially have video of the situation to see what other kind of extraneous details or circumstances are involved. So sorry, I don't have a better answer.
And when you say video, it's not just the FSD. I mean, the clips. You're talking about the whole, the screen and everything, because you'd like to see that, right?
Yeah, because like that just is super odd. If it's midway through the route and it goes off navigation, that I just don't see them building in a way, or not having like basic checks before they release the build to be sure that that doesn't happen ever. I don't see how it would even like try to be optimized for that in any way, shape, or form. So that's super odd. I mean, it sounds like a bug, obviously, but you know, it's a very odd bug that I think, you know, wouldn't be present at all.
Okay, thank you. Wes, any thoughts on V13 videos that you've seen? Are you adjusting your expectations at all?
I had honestly, like, I haven't seen enough. I'm kind of surprised that there hasn't been more. Chris said he's done a ton of drives. What I guess the kind of my main takeaway is, it seems like there's been so many drives and very, very little eccentricities or potential regressions. So I'm not terribly certain about what I'm seeing yet. I think the other thing that's important is that I haven't seen any real other new behavior. So I don't know if it supports active school zones, or, you know, kind of like do not enter signs. So those are two kind of big things that I'd really like to see. I saw Chris said that there might be a regression on a, you know, no right on red. So I'd be interested to know what's going on there a little bit more, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you agree that right on red when there's a sign is not safety critical, right? Because we haven't really seen a situation
Yeah.
where,
Yeah, totally. The only thing that I'm worried about that is that it's a, you know, kind of a basic sign. So, you know, why aren't basic signs supported? That kind of worries me. So if NHTSA doesn't care about that, and maybe just police do, you know, then that's kind of on the driver. But if NHTSA cares about it, then they'll potentially pull the build if it doesn't support those at some point. They'll stop the build, just like they did with the full stop on a stop sign.
yeah. Did you watch Sundar Pichai's interview with Andrew Ross Sorkin on the Deal book?
Yeah, I just did this morning. It was really good. It was super
Yeah.
fun to listen to.
Yeah. So what are your observations?
You know, Sundar was a little bit candid at a couple points, but you know, he's doing the CEO dance where he's not really saying too much. I really liked how he talked about Waymo, though, and expanding, you know, to many more cities in the coming year. It really speaks to the fact that they might be actually scaling at this point, and that's super exciting. You know, for not just for Waymo, but just for autonomous cars in general. Like, for them to potentially have a scalable solution is super exciting. So I really like that. I did, you know, kind of enjoy his comments about, you know, the overall AI industry. You know, he's still talking, you know, fairly good about, you know, his competitors, and he's open to competition, and still sees like a really bright future for AI. So I was
that first comment, like literally off the gate, it was like, let's see what they have. Like Microsoft has their own models. I think they're using somebody else's models. You know, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
The competition is hot. It's a hot competition. But you know, so you know, you mentioned Waymo, and I polled my followers today who will launch Robotaxi in top 10 cities first. 76% said Tesla, 500 plus votes. Less than a quarter said Waymo. Do you agree with those results?
No, I honestly, like, it looks like Waymo could actually be doing that first.
Yeah.
they have a pretty big head start on rolling out in cities and having a full retail product. Tesla doesn't have a real retail product yet, because it's still supervised.
Yeah. Now let me ask you something. So first of all, obviously this points to an incredible bias in these polls. But secondly, how much of an advantage does Google producing its TPUs being vertically integrated to that give an advantage to Waymo versus Tesla?
Well, I assume that they're on par now because Tesla also produces its own homegrown edge AI ASICs.
Do you think
don't
Dojo
think
is
they-
as capable as TPUs?
No, the trip chips, the ones that are at the edge in the vehicle.
I'm talking on the training side.
Oh, on the training side. Oh, I still feel like Google has an advantage on the training side. Their architecture, which I'm very knowledgeable about, is extremely mature, and their infrastructure stack is extremely mature. So I do think that there's still a lead there. Now, is that lead getting bigger? No, I don't think it is. I think they're maintaining it or losing a bit of ground, but I still think they have a lead.
What do you think about Sundar's comment at the top? Sundar's comment. I think progress is going to get harder. When I look at 2025, the low-hanging fruit is gone.
Yeah, I didn't really get, kind of a grim feeling from that. That's just normal, that companies pick off the low-hanging fruit first. But, there is this idea of, kind of big milestones where there's this 100 or 1,000 or even a million X improvement, with certain jumps in technology or software. And I still feel like he sees that still on the horizon, still, a possibility. So I feel like the context of that was just in like normal, kind of how business works, how tech business works.
Do you think Tesla can get to tens of thousands of driverless vehicles on the roads with scaling laws alone? Or do you think there will have to be an algorithmic breakthrough like transformers for Tesla to get there?
I think the magic is still in their AI architecture, and scaling laws are just, the kind of generalized way of understanding like how progress is made. It's kind of the Moore's law type thing. The real magic is in the architecture and how they train, not exactly, just keep brute forcing the solution, because neural nets in and of themselves are workarounds to brute force. So they just, they don't do that. They actually use and build neurons to do this, kind of more advanced learning. So it's not just brute force. It's not just scaling laws.
Okay. Now, let's say, for example, before I go to Luce, let's say Google came, because correct me if I'm wrong, but when Google came out with attention is all you need in 2017, they couldn't really foresee how transformational, no pun intended, it's going to be with Transformers, which I think came out 2019, 2020. And that was basically open source at that point. So everyone adopted Transformers. Is that a fair characterization of what happened?
Not necessarily. So Transformers were, the reason that it was open sourced is that, kind of everybody was open sourced and it was extremely nascent. So it's like, hey, we've got this neat idea and we want to share this with the world, and hoping that other people will contribute because it's not a completely solved problem yet. So my thought is that once that was released, people took a while to kind of build on top of it, come up with new ideas, and kind of figure out, what they wanted to do with it. And that actually happened very quickly. Like Hugging Face grabbed a hold of that and started building on top of it very, very quickly. Within a matter of weeks, they had released, new code and new ways to utilize it. So it happened actually very fast.
Do you think Google regrets that decision today?
No, I don't think so. Sundar talked about that a bit. That, you know, at the end of the day, all of this has been kind of like a community kind of solution. They were the kind of genesis, though. I mean, basically every LLM is built off of some portion of the transformer architecture. But I don't think so. I mean, they still open source stuff today. They still write papers and release them. It's still the way the community works.
But the community is becoming a bit more closed, isn't it?
I mean, you know, without sounding too blunt, that's really just OpenAI at this point. It's
I see.
not really the other companies per se. There's still a ton of papers that are being released and announced. Like that's still largely the case today.
Now, ChatGPT is a bit of a, I mean, OpenAI and ChatGPT are a bit of a threat to Google's dominance in search, don't you think? And
Sorry, say that.
ChatGPT does threaten Google's dominance in search today, and it was built, in part because of transformers came about, which Google invented. So, like in that way, don't you think? So you still think that Google would have open source transformers even after the fact, knowing ChatGPT is a really real threat for their dominance in search?
Yeah, I do. One of the reasons why I think so is that, you know, there are things that Google releases and there are things that Google doesn't release. And they release the architecture, they release the paper, you know, they release methods and processes, but there's other things that they don't. There's other trade secrets that they keep, and they just run in their data centers or, you know, run in the code inside the company. And there's other things that they don't, which still gives them an advantage, you know, over the stuff that's out in the wild per se. So it's not like they're giving away every single thing that they have. That's not what's happening. So look at it more like they give away, you know, essentially in the canonical terms of like, you know, baking bread, they gave away the flour, and then they gave away the method to produce the recipe, but they didn't really give away like the little secret ingredients or these little processes that they do to kind of either make the bread faster or tastier or just better in many different ways. So they still have that. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Luce.
Well, my comments was for 10 minutes ago when we were talking about bull cases. So.
Okay. So Wes, now that you know Waymo is expanding to newer cities and maybe they have a scalable solution, at least they believe, does that change your forecast for FSD and Tesla Robotaxi valuation 5-10 years from today?
No, I don't think it really hurts it at all. I think if anything, it helps it. I mean, it shows that they obviously, if they're scaling to that many cities, I think it's obvious that they're going to have a better and they're also going to have a better, more scalable software solution and services solution. So I think it bodes well for Tesla to eventually, hit their goals.
Okay, it was cutting off in a little bit. I think you're driving maybe, but essentially, I think what he said is Waymo's expansion helps maybe acts as a proof of concept for Tesla robotaxis in the future. So helps Tesla FSD and robotaxis in the future. Okay. Any other questions for Wes? Any other questions for Wes? Let's switch to NVIDIA stock is down a little bit today. Amazon. Okay, we talked. I think we talked about training with Wes. Okay, let's just switch to MicroStrategy then. ACDC, any opinions on NVIDIA, MicroStrategy, or Carvana? I know you gave me three names just, so I didn't get a chance to look at them yet.
So not, I mean, the same thing on NVIDIA and basically MicroStrategy too. I mean, I really don't have much of an opinion on that, but I did share with you that Carvana is about a year ago. I wish I had bought it at that time, but I shied away from it because of the valuation kind of a thing. But when I sold my when I sold my car to buy the Tesla, I used Carvana, and I used to kind of like make fun of it. I'm like, is this for people who are too lazy to go to a CarMax or to trade it in or go to a dealer? But it was a great model. They bought my car, gave me the best price in the market, and they were able to turn it around and sell it within a week for about a 25% markup. So it was a great model. But when I look at it where it is in terms of valuation, I mean, it's unbelievable. I cannot believe what the stock has done. I mean, it's trading like everybody's only buying used cars from now.
Yeah. The stock of Carvana went down to near zero at the end of 2022. And in early 2023, they worked out a deal and they saved the equity, which is incredible. I mean, that was incredible. They turned it around. And since early 2023, the stock has increased. I hope everybody's sitting down. By 60 times. 60 times in the last 2 years, the stock has surged, which is incredible. Okay. And the PE ratio, I hope everybody is continuing to sit down, is 26,000. Okay. It's a $52 billion market cap. And I think ACDC is correct that this stock is trading like everybody is going to buy used cars from now on. And to the extent that you believe Robotaxis are around the corner, this may be a company to short to hedge your macroeconomic exposure. Yeah, really interesting. It's down about 3% today, and I shorted it, I think, yesterday. So, looking to add to my position. Yeah, really interesting, really amazing. I mean, ACDC, do you think was there anything special about the experience that others can't replicate other than branding?
So in the past, I've always sold my cars to private parties because, you know, you're eliminating the middleman and you actually end up getting the best value. And unfortunately, we live in I'm in Chicagoland, so we live in an environment where it's no longer safe to do so. You know, people have literally been robbed, killed, and whatnot, trying to do a transaction as such. So that was my reason. I agreed to go with. So I had an Audi, and I got a trade-in value from Tesla. I got a trade-in value from Audi, and then I took it to CarMax. And then just for the sake of it, because everything is done online with Carvana, I also got a quote from them. And it was literally the most seamless way to do it. Within 5 minutes, like, you get a quote, and they give you a date, like 2 days for an appointment to bring your car in. So I scheduled it the day I was picking up my Tesla. Went in, you take your title, walk out of there literally in 5 minutes with a check. So, I mean, it was so good that even if, let's just say, my concerns about doing a transaction myself are gone, I may just lean towards selling it to Carvana because of just the ease of use of it. And then when I was looking at it, because I'm like, okay, let's see if they list my car out of, curiosity. And I think it took them like about 5 days to maybe look at it, get it checked. They listed it, and within 2 days, they didn't. So they give you the best price, and they don't mark it up at the highest margin. They're looking for a quick turnaround, and within 7 days, that car was gone. And I think they made about 25 to 30% profit on it for literally a 7-day turnaround.
Okay, Luce?
Do you guys have any opinion on Carvana financials and if they are going to be profitable and how much?
Wes?
Sorry, I had a question about Carvana when you have a minute.
Go ahead.
So I'm having a really hard time. I've sold many cars, and for them to be making this much profit off of used cars, I'm like floored. That's currently the case? They're making that much profit off of the sale of their cars in general, 25 to 30%. Is that true?
They're not making a profit. I think that was just one transaction, ACDC referring to personal anecdote. But if you look at their financials, they're break even basically.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's more.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. ACDC, when was your transaction?
This was in September of last year when I bought my Tesla. And
Yeah.
I've actually, the profit is around the same that they're making. And like I said, just because of the valuation, I never looked at it, deeper, but I would be curious to look into it because their footprint is not much, right? So it's not a cost intensive model. So I'd like to know exactly where they're going because like another friend of mine, he sold his, he had a Corvette. It was a little bit older, but same thing, quick turnaround, best price. And within a week to 2 weeks, they sell it off.
Okay. I mean, they have zero net income. All right. So let's level set with that. Obviously, there are costs to the business. What you're talking about is more kind of contribution profits, gross profits, but there are operating costs as well. There's marketing costs. Sometimes the cars may not turn out as profitable as you think, like in your case. Not every case is perfect. And but we can take a closer look if you guys want. That's fine.
Yeah, there's something definitely in their model that's still not working because I think their advertising costs actually have gone down compared to 2020, 2021. That's when it really picked up. That was the last time when it spiked during COVID times because it was the only way to sell your car touchless, contactless model and everything. So they heavily advertised at that time. And I hardly see any advertising from them now. And like I said, their actual footprint is not that big anymore. They're not really focusing on those towers where they stack up the cars anymore. They usually have like obscure locations where you just drop off your car and pick up your check and everything. So there's something in there. And yes, you're right. That could definitely be it because the person who I dropped off my car to, they didn't inspect the car. They literally just like drove it around the block, like half a block, and gave me the check. Whereas CarMax will take your car, they'll put it up, they'll raise it up, they'll look under the hood, they'll look at everything and give you, an estimate based on that.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm pulling up their financial statements. Give me 1 second. Compensation and benefits, 175 million. Advertising, 56 million. It's about the same throughout the last 8 quarters. Market occupancy, 17 million. Other, 192 million. Total SG&A expenses, $469 million in Q3. Pretty stable in the last 8 quarters, down significantly from 2022. Okay. They have their advertising expense from 2022, quarterly advertising expense, and their compensation and benefit expense are also lower. Okay. Let's see. Overhead in Q3 2024, 147 million per quarter. Back in 2022, it was 180 million-ish. So it's not that much of a drop. Retail and wholesale vehicle operations, SG&A expense, 188 versus about 300 per quarter. So that's some big savings there. Let's see. Total SG&A expenses per unit is excluding depreciation and SPC. Okay, so let's go to GAAP. Total SG&A expenses per unit is $4,300. Okay, so that's obviously massive, right? So that's where your profits going. You're talking gross profits, and that's where the expenses are. $1,600 per car, compensation and benefits. $500 per car, advertising. $267 logistics. $157 market occupancy. $1,800 other, which is crazy. Like, they should break that down further, not bulk $1,800. Their biggest expense bucket is other. That's a little lame. Other expenses tend to be more variable in nature, although they also have some semi-fixed components resulting from, for example, operations management, payroll, and underutilization of logistics capacity. They add back depreciation, stock-based compensation to get to their adjusted EBITDA nonsense. So they don't really have anything. They don't really have anything going for them. I think this is more of a hype and bubble.
It's essentially a meme stock.
Yeah, exactly. But we're seeing that across the board today. Like, we're seeing that in GameStop. One of my friends I was on the phone with yesterday, as we're on the phone, he sees this meme come through and buys call options on GameStop. I should have hung up the phone and ended our friendship right at that very moment, but I did not. And the stock is down a little bit today after that nonsense yesterday, which also is interesting, right? Actually, it's up now, 1.3%. It was down in the morning. So when you look at the 5-year graph of this company, back, the first GameStop mania started at the end of 2020, and then it surged. All the short squeeze stuff happened at the beginning of January 2021. Okay, that lasted for a few months, and the stock went from about $1 to $80. Okay, and then kind of whittled down in the following 2 years. Then this guy comes around and sends out this meme with the leaning, forward leaning in the chair thing. That was, I think, April or May 2024. And that lasted about a month after he posted that meme. And the stock didn't go up 80 times this time. It went up about 100%, so 2 times. And this time, the stock went down even less. And my guess is that the rise is going to last even shorter. And this is what we're seeing with Rivian as well, GameStop. AMC stock went up similarly yesterday because, of course, GameStop and AMC used to be kind of like the duo. But the AMC CEO came out today and issued, I think, about $250 million of stock and cashed in on that for the company. And he's probably going to pay himself with it. And then the question is, why isn't the GameStop CEO doing the same thing, right? But, I think maybe there's something that I don't know about in that company that's going on. But I think it's just goes to show that these, meme pump and dumps are happening to a lower degree and lasting shorter, which is what you would expect because the economy is just completely different today than it was 3-4 years ago. So, Rivian stock was up, I think, about 10% today in the morning. Now came down to only plus 4%. It's kind of up and down, up and down. There's a bit of short interest in Rivian, so that's a little bouncy. Tesla is up 2%, $377 per share, coming up to an all-time high, coming close to about, I think the all-time high is around maybe like 420 or something. So, but it's $1.2 trillion market cap. So the market cap is already, I think, is at an all-time high. So, and then let's look at MicroStrategy is up 4% today, down 25% from the top of about $500. Bitcoin is at near all-time high at $102,000. Nvidia stock is down 2% today. I think the shine is coming off of Nvidia, but I'm sure Wes disagrees with me and screaming at the screen right now at his phone as he drives. I don't want to give Wes a accident. And then what other? It's kind of like the meme stack mania is that. I mean, Doge coin is up to 44 cents. Too. Some of these cryptocurrencies are up. Like Solana is also up to, I think, all-time highs. So, the Fed has an interesting dilemma here. You have unemployment rate coming up to 4.25% today, almost 4.3%. And the private payrolls actually was lower than the expected. People were expecting a big bounce because October was a bunch of hurricanes and some strikes, and we didn't get that bounce that people were hoping for, especially on the private front. Retail jobs added for the holiday season was lower than last year. Average hourly earnings came in higher than expected, and next week we're going to get some inflation data. So the underlying inflation trends is still, uncomfortable levels. And if you look at the forecast for December inflation, they're expected to go up. Right, the current forecasted inflation figure for December year over year, core PCE is 3%. And the forecasted figure for November is 2.9%. So it may be going the wrong direction. And now we have Bitcoin at all-time highs, meme stocks rising again. So the Fed has its work cut out for it. Luce?
GameStop, the only thing it has in its favor, it's a very good CEO who was the ex-head of operations of Nintendo in the US. It is very good, and that's why he's not selling the stock. He truly believes he can turn the boat around, even though I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I'm short the stock, so ACDC.
Okay, so call this anecdotal or whatever, but did you hear the news on Robinhood stepping into sports betting?
No, I didn't. Although their CEO has been going around for sure. Yeah. What do you think? I guess some overlap there.
Oh, it's a great strategy for them. I mean, you've already got the most speculative population trading on your platform. Why not offer them a few more opportunities, right? And there's a lot of crossover in that same customer base too. But I mean, to me, if this doesn't scream top of the market, then I don't know what does. I mean, so you can buy a stock or load up on some options, and your portfolio goes up. Call it like $50,000 through the week. You're all pumped up. You take a margin, some margin cash, you move it into your betting account and play some bets and get ready to party on the weekend. You lose your bets over the weekend. You come up Monday with a hangover and the market's down and you got a margin call. I mean, I don't know what could go wrong.
Yeah. Wave. Wave.
Hey, Yaman. Can I ask a question about Cybertruck? Not sure you covered it. I just joined.
No, we haven't. What's the question?
Is there any indication, or either public or other means, of what the demand looks like? I saw a Tagmeyer tweet a couple days ago that had somewhere over 1,000 Cybertrucks parked outside, and I know anecdotally myself, I I canceled at least 70-80% of my reservations. And just wondered if you guys covered it or had any insight.
I mean, 1,000 Cybertruck is not that many. I don't think they have some sort of demand problem on the Cybertruck. I think it's a great product. I think they're gonna have to lower the prices though. The original advertised price was $39,000. 39, 49, and 69 were the prices. Now the dual motor is more capable than what they advertise, I think. And so, there has been inflation in the world, but still, 49 to 80,000, 79, that's $30,000 increase is just a lot. So, especially considering the fact that raw material prices have come down to when they advertised it. So when they were talking about why they increased prices, they talked about raw material prices. Well, that's come down. So where's the price drops? And I think that's coming in the future. And I think given the interest rate environment, they're going to have to do that at some point. I think there's some issues with labor. Labor costs are much higher across the industry. So maybe that's part of it. But yeah, I would expect Cybertruck price to come down to at least about $60,000. ACDC, what do you think?
I personally don't think it's been a big hit for Tesla, but what I wanted to do was actually just quickly ask Wes. I think Wes has a Cybertruck, and he's probably had it for a few months. I just wanted to get his first-hand take on not just how much, of course, he likes it, but like, what's the vibe he's getting from other people that he's run across? I mean, are people, when people see it, is that what they're saying? Like, oh, I want to get one. How can I get one? Just want to get his personal take.
I've had mine since March, and I drive it every day, and I love it. The utility is amazing. For instance, yesterday I put my electric riding lawnmower in the bed and drove it for an hour and a half down to the repair facility, and like super smooth, no worries. I haul things all the time. I haul a trailer. I haul a lot of weight. I own property out in the Pacific Northwest. So with our big windstorm, there was a lot of stuff to carry. So I love it. When other people ask me about it, I tell them I love it. They ask how much it was. I tell them, they say, well, it's comparable to a F-150 fully built out, fully optioned, or an F-250, kind of mid-range. I'm like, yeah, like that's roughly what it is. And they ask me how much it can pull, what's, the cargo load. And I tell them, they're like, yeah, that's about an F-250. So I think it's important that, people see the functionality and understand that. Very little people ask me about the range, which I find interesting because around this area, there's an incredible amount of superchargers now. So I think people actually know that in this area. There's also an incredible amount of Teslas in general. So there is that too. I do believe that they have to get the cost down, and I know they're working on that. And I would have thought that the cost would have come down a little bit quicker, but I'm sure, Wes and Lars are 100% focused on that. And I know it will happen. They will innovate themselves to a lower cost of goods. So there you go. That's my take.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. I see a lot of people in the audience who have been saying a bunch of negative things about the space, and they still come. And of course, they want free content. They want a space that's open 24/7, that they pay nothing for, they contribute nothing for. But that's just not going to happen. And I think we're going to go to about an hour per episode from now on, and maybe even half hours per episode. And then maybe just for subscribers after that. Thank you very much, and I'll chat with you all next time. Take care.